Tulsi Gabbard, the new director of National Intelligence, GAG, went full Kremlin spokeswoman during a Fox News interview yesterday. How truly humiliating for the United States. Sounding very much like Dmitry Peskov, a Putin propagandist, Tulsi accuses Zelensky of escalating. He should have not escalated and just let Putin take what he wants, help himself to whatever.
What happened in the White House after close to an hour of conversation when President Zelensky directly challenged President Trump and Vice President Vance in front of the media and the American people. He really showed his lack of interest in any real good faith negotiations.
This is the pro-Putin reaction to what happened in the Oval Office. Zelensky was rude. Zelensky caused an escalation, rather. He's part of the problem. And meanwhile, very calm, very demure Vladimir Putin just says, let's get together and chat. Putin's being the adult and Zelensky's being like this escalating little kid throwing tantrums.
I can tell you there were a lot of conversations that were happening through different emissaries, both for Zelensky and for President Trump, leading up to his visit there to the Oval Office. And President Zelensky's immediate escalation there was frankly quite a surprise. This has created a huge rift in the relationship. President Zelensky, as you pointed out in the clips that you played, doesn't believe that he did anything wrong, that there was no issue with what he brought up in the Oval Office with President Trump. There's going to have to be a rebuilding of any kind of interest in good faith negotiations.
The idea that Putin and Trump will be doing the good faith negotiations with no problem, but Zelensky's going to have to be a good boy and he's going to have to help rebuild before any good faith. It is just a laughable perspective. Now, there was another moment during this interview where there was a very simple opportunity to criticize Putin for his aggression and for his invasion. And Tulsi just pivots to instead attacking President Zelensky.
Also, though, think that they're in more alignment, and they should be, with the U.S. when it comes to those freedoms and things you talk about. Certainly, those are not things that you would say that Russia or Putin celebrates or bestows on his own people.
That's correct. I would not make that claim, and it's clear that that's not the case, nor does President Trump. But that's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about many of these European countries and Zelensky himself, who claim to be standing and fighting for the cause of freedom and democracy, when we actually look at what's happening in reality in these countries, as well as with Zelensky's government in Ukraine, is the exact opposite. You have the canceling of elections in Ukraine. You have political parties being silenced or even criminalized or thrown in prison. You have the freedom of religion, churches being shut down. You have political opposition being silenced. You have total government control of the media.
Now, just about everything she points to there is happening in Russia far more heavy-handedly and thanks to Putin. Now, some of what she says is taking place in Ukraine. For example, elections are suspended in Ukraine during times of war. I don't like that. I think that it would be good to have elections anyway. We did it in the United States during the Iraq War. Okay, I don't like it. But Zelensky didn't come up with that. That is part of Ukrainian law. This subjugation of media control, that's what's happening in Russia. And there seems to be just an unwillingness to hold both countries to the same standard, even when it is clear that one country, Russia, is the aggressor here. Now, finally, in this interview, moments after being shown polling that shows most of the American people don't really like Trump's cozying up to Putin, Tulsi goes, oh, no. Americans are celebrating what Trump is doing.
Dmitry Peskov saying what the U.S. is doing is changing the game, and it largely coincides with our vision. What do you make of Russia celebrating and saying what the U.S. is doing lines up with their vision?
They're going to say what their position is. What we should pay attention to here in the United States of America is the American people, so many people across the country celebrating the strong leadership that President Trump and Vice President Vance demonstrated in the Oval Office, something we have not seen over the last 4 years of the Biden administration, where we finally have a president who's going to stand up strongly and fiercely and unwaveringly for the cause of peace and freedom for the American people.
How heroic. How heroic. Despite the fact that the American people don't like Trump's cozying up to Putin, giving him the benefit of the doubt and attacking President Zelensky, despite that, it was so strong what JD and Donald did in that Oval Office, and she absolutely loves it. My, how far Tulsi Gabbard has fallen. And, you know, like her or hate her, Hillary Clinton was right about Tulsi. And a lot of people didn't want to hear it years ago, but at the end of the day, she was completely correct.